Something happens to women when they cross 40, something no one wants to name out loud. It isn't sudden like lightning, it's gradual, quiet, and invisible until the day it detonates. One morning she's your wife, gentle, steady, folding laundry, packing school lunches, asking if you remembered to pay the phone bill. The next morning, she's a stranger, downloading dating apps, buying lingerie, flirting online with men she barely knows. And you stand there frozen, bewildered, asking yourself what the hell just happened. It's happening everywhere. Men across the world are waking up to the same nightmare. The dependable woman they thought they knew has vanished, replaced by someone chasing youth like it's oxygen. But the truth? It didn't start suddenly. It's been brewing for years, buried under school schedules, PTA meetings, and the illusion of stability. You thought time was your ally. You thought growing older together meant safety. It wasn't. It was a countdown. There's a psychological timer built into most women, a subtle, relentless ticking that begins long before either of you notice. And somewhere between 35 and 45, that clock strikes midnight. When it does, everything changes, not might, will. Men misunderstand this transformation because they expect aging to bring calm. They imagine that by 40, a woman should be wiser, grounded, more content. But that's not what happens. Her body changes, oh yes. But what's more dangerous is that her identity begins to erode. The woman who once felt seen simply by existing now looks in the mirror and sees someone unfamiliar. For years, her reflection was her compass. It told her she mattered. From the time she was a teenager, every compliment, every lingering glance, every act of pursuit built her sense of worth. Society fed her a simple formula: beauty, value, desire, identity. It's not her fault, it's programming. And for 2 decades, from 15 to 35, that code ran flawlessly. She didn't question it because it worked. Men desired her. Doors opened. Compliments were currency. She never had to wonder if she was relevant. The world reminded her every day. Then biology does what it always does. It takes away what it gave. Now at 40, she stares into a mirror that doesn't lie but no longer flatters. The smoothness softens. The glow dulls. Strangers stop looking. Not because she's unattractive, but because she's no longer new. The same world that once celebrated her now looks past her. And that's when the panic begins. What she feels isn't vanity, it's existential. It's the collapse of the self. You see, when your value has always been tied to being seen, invisibility feels like death. She doesn't just miss youth. She misses who she was when she was wanted. Imagine an athlete at the end of their career. For years, their body was their currency, their power, their meaning. Then suddenly it's gone. The crowd stops cheering. That's what aging feels like for many women, except there's no ceremony, no retirement, no applause for years of service. Just silence. And in that silence, something primal begins to stir. A need for proof that she still matters. Not as a mother, not as a wife, as a woman. At 22, compliments were noise. At 42, they're oxygen. A stranger's glance in a coffee shop, a harmless flirtation at the gym. Those tiny sparks release more dopamine than 10 years of your devotion. Why? Because your love, though real, is obligated. You're her husband. You're supposed to find her beautiful. But that stranger, he doesn't have to. His attention is chosen. That's what makes it addictive. One compliment from him equals 1,000 from you, because his validation whispers the one thing she can't stop craving. You still have it. And once she tastes that again, it's over. Not immediately, but inevitably. Because now she knows the drug still works. Now she remembers what it felt like to be chosen, pursued, admired, And that memory becomes an obsession, one your stability can never match. You'll know it's begun when nostalgia creeps in, when she starts talking about her past with a light in her eyes. Suddenly her 20s aren't something she grew out of, they're something she wants back. Her old photos reappear. She mentions exes with a half smile instead of disgust. The wild nights she once laughed at now sound sacred. That's not reminiscing, that's mourning. She's grieving her youth, not because it was better, but because it was alive. And your steady love, your quiet home, your routine, feels like a funeral for who she used to be. That's when marriages start to fracture, not through anger, but through longing. Longing for something that no longer exists. Here's what science doesn't say loudly enough. A woman's brain changes dramatically with age. Her reward system, the same one that once made her heart race at the sight of you, becomes less sensitive. What used to flood her with pleasure now barely makes a ripple. At 20, holding hands was electric. At 40, it's maintenance. That romantic weekend you planned, her brain categorizes it as routine. The affection you perfected over the years, it registers as background noise. Not because she stopped loving you, but because her neurochemistry demands intensity now. Novelty, drama, uncertainty. You, the familiar, dependable man she built a life with, no longer stimulate the circuitry that once made her fall in love. To her subconscious mind, you've become safe, and safe doesn't release dopamine. This is the hidden cruelty of biology. What once bonded you now bores her. What once felt like passion now feels like predictability. And predictability to the aging female brain feels like death. If this were only about biology, it would be easier. We could name it, accept it, move through it together. But what makes this transition catastrophic isn't nature, it's culture. Because society doesn't tell women the truth about aging. It doesn't say your beauty will fade, but your wisdom will deepen. It says, don't let it fade, don't ever stop being desirable. From magazine covers to television dramas to social media reels, women are told that youth is power, and power is everything. They're taught to see aging not as a season to embrace, but as an illness to fight. And when a woman turns 40, that conditioning detonates. Every advertisement she scrolls past tells her she's running out of time. Every influencer whispers that reinvention is freedom. Every therapist, life coach, and talk show host chants the same mantra. You deserve to be happy. It sounds empowering, but in practice, it's gasoline on a dying flame. At first, it begins innocently. A few new friends, a wine night, a conversation that feels harmless. But these gatherings quickly turn into therapy circles of self-justification. Listen closely and you'll hear the hymns of a modern religion. Follow your heart. Never settle. You owe it to yourself. These aren't friends. They're evangelists of discontent. Their sermons are designed to make rebellion feel righteous, because most of them have already walked that path. They've left their marriages, traded stability for excitement, and now live in a kind of emotional limbo, a place where freedom feels good for a while, but loneliness lurks beneath it. And deep down, they know it. They just can't face it. So they recruit. They need someone else to make the same choice, to prove it wasn't a mistake. They whisper to your wife that she's settling, that her husband doesn't appreciate her, that she could do better. And she believes them because she wants to. In their stories, she sees her reflection. In their validation, she finds permission. And with every conversation, her loyalty erodes a little more. Once this new mindset takes root, she doesn't need her friends anymore. The algorithm will take over. Her social media feed becomes a mirror of her fear and fantasy. Videos of women rediscovering themselves after divorce, before and after transformations, empowerment speeches drenched in soft lighting and piano music. Every scroll tells her the same lie, that she's missing out, that everyone else her age is glowing, thriving, awakening, that it's not too late to rewrite her story. She doesn't realize that what she's watching isn't life, it's marketing, manufactured hope, a simulation of liberation designed to sell products, retreats, makeovers, and validation. But her brain doesn't care about truth, it cares about emotion. Each image floods her system with dopamine, convincing her that happiness is just one brave decision away. And what's the brave decision every clip points to? Leaving, walking away from the dull, predictable man who represents her past. Then comes the physical transformation, the part you can see. At first, it's subtle, a new skincare routine, a gym membership, a haircut she used to say she'd never try. She calls it self-care, but it's not about care, it's about resurrection. Every new outfit, every selfie, every compliment from friends is a small ritual of defiance. Defiance against gravity, against time, against reality. She's no longer trying to look good, she's trying to look young. There's a desperation in it now, the same kind of desperate hope addicts have when they chase a high that no longer hits the same. She'll stand in front of the mirror longer than before, adjusting her angles, taking pictures she doesn't post, just to remind herself that she's still in control of something. But that's the illusion, because every time she does it, she deepens the dependence. She's now living in a world where her self-worth depends on how effectively she can delay the inevitable and then the emotional distance. It doesn't happen through fighting, not at first. It happens through absence. Suddenly she needs me time, she's figuring things out. She joins a new yoga group or takes weekend trips alone. She tells you it's about growth, but in truth, it's about separation. Psychological, not physical yet, but close. Her mood swings between hostility and eerie calm. When she's angry, she's rewriting the story, convincing herself you're the problem. When she's sweet, she's managing guilt. You start to feel like you're living with a ghost. She's there, but not present. Her laughter sounds different. Her affection is mechanical, timed, rehearsed. You can sense it, but can't prove it, like trying to catch smoke with your hands. And here's what most men don't realize. By the time you feel this shift, she's already emotionally gone. She's not deciding whether to leave, she's deciding when. What makes all of this worse, almost unforgivable, is that modern culture rewards it. When she finally breaks, when she walks away, there will be applause. Friends will comment, "So brave." Therapists will say, "You're finally choosing yourself." Magazines will write, "It's never too late to start over." No one will ask about the cost, not the husband left bewildered, not the children quietly shuttled between homes, not the memories reduced to ashes. The world will call it empowerment, but what it really is, is escape. Escape from the terrifying realization that no amount of makeup, attention, or validation can stop time. And in her desperate attempt to outrun time, she destroys everything that anchored her to it. There's an unbearable irony in all this. She believes she's liberating herself, but in truth, she's running from her reflection. The woman she's chasing, the youthful, carefree version of herself, no longer exists. She's a ghost, a photograph, a memory frozen in the amber of nostalgia. But she keeps chasing her, hoping to reclaim the feeling, not realizing that every step forward is a step away from peace, because peace requires acceptance, and acceptance means letting go, and letting go to her feels like death. So she trades wisdom for excitement, depth for attention, love for novelty. She destroys the home that kept her grounded, all to prove she's still airborne. And when the dust settles, when the noise fades and the mirrors no longer lie, she'll discover the one truth she refused to see. You can't become young again by burning down everything that made you old. To understand what truly drives this transformation, you have to stop thinking in moral terms. It's not about good or bad, loyalty or betrayal, at least not at the surface. It's about psychology. When a woman reaches her 40s, her relationship with herself fractures. The outer identity she's lived through, the daughter, the girlfriend, the wife, the mother, begins to crumble. And beneath those layers lies a terrifying question she's avoided her entire adult life. Who am I when no one desires me? That's not a question most men ever have to face. Men are measured by their achievements, their competence, their ability to provide and protect. But women, from adolescence onward, are conditioned to believe that their power lies in being wanted. And when that power begins to fade, it's not just a loss of youth, it's a loss of self. There's a moment, invisible but seismic, when she stops seeking meaning and starts seeking proof. Proof that she's still special. Proof that she can still command attention. Proof that the world hasn't moved on without her. This is the root of the so-called reinvention phase. It looks like self-improvement. New hobbies, new fitness routines, new social circles. But beneath the surface, it's a psychological rebellion. She's trying to overwrite the script of mortality. Every decision, every impulse, every risk becomes a form of denial. I am not fading, I am not invisible, I am still alive. The tragedy is that this rebellion doesn't create freedom, it creates chaos, because she isn't rebelling against her husband, she's rebelling against time. And you can't win a war against time. By now, you've probably noticed the paradox. The same woman who once begged for stability now resents it. The same routine she once called home now feels like a cage. This is where many men lose themselves, trying to understand what changed. The answer is simple but cruel. Her brain no longer rewards safety. Neurologically, predictability is no longer soothing. It's numbing. Her reward system has been rewired to respond to novelty. Newness equals life. Familiarity equals decay. It's the same phenomenon that drives midlife crises in men, but it manifests differently. When a man's stability becomes unbearable, he buys a motorcycle. When a woman's stability becomes unbearable, she burns down her life, because for her, chaos isn't danger, it's proof of existence. The unknown gives her a rush of aliveness that routine can no longer provide. She doesn't realize that this craving for chaos is her biology's last rebellion before surrender. What most people don't understand is that hormonal and neurological shifts in midlife often mirror adolescence. The same dopamine circuits that once drove teenage impulsivity begin to reawaken, except now they're mixed with adult dissatisfaction. That's why a 42-year-old woman can behave like a 16-year-old with credit cards and consequences. The emotional wiring is the same: impulsivity, idealism, the hunger for validation. But the stakes are higher. At 16, rebellion builds identity. At 40, it destroys it. But to her, it doesn't feel like destruction. It feels like liberation. She confuses adrenaline for joy, risk for courage, infatuation for love. Her nervous system is starving, and novelty is the quickest way to feed it. And this is why the affair, emotional or physical, becomes almost inevitable. Not because she planned it, not because she's evil, but because her brain, in its desperate need to feel alive, mistakes danger for meaning. There's a line in every woman's story where the longing becomes a pattern, when she starts seeking situations that will remind her she's still desirable. Maybe it begins at work, maybe the co-worker compliments her. Maybe it's online, a stranger messages her. Maybe it's old flames resurfacing through social media. At first, it's harmless. She tells herself she's just being friendly. But deep down, something ancient awakens. That intoxicating feeling of being wanted without obligation. That's the high she's chasing. That's the drug she can't quit. Your love is steady. It no longer spikes her chemistry. But his attention is unpredictable, and unpredictability is the brain's favorite form of pleasure. Every text, every flirtation, every secret conversation releases the very chemicals she's been missing. It's the same neurochemical loop that keeps gamblers at slot machines. A small hit of dopamine followed by uncertainty, the perfect recipe for addiction. She doesn't even need to cross physical boundaries for the addiction to form. The emotional intensity is enough, and once she's hooked, she'll start justifying it in ways that sound poetic, but are pure self-deception. I haven't felt this alive in years. He understands me. It's not about him. It's about rediscovering myself. No, it's not. It's about escaping herself. Long before the legal papers are filed, the emotional divorce begins. It's subtle, almost invisible. She stops talking to you, not out of anger, but disinterest. You start noticing secrets that never existed before. The locked phone, the vague explanations, the new privacy. She tells you you're overreacting, that she just needs space. But what she's really saying is, you're no longer part of my internal world. Once that happens, reconciliation becomes almost impossible. Because she's already rewritten the story. In her mind, she's not abandoning you, she's escaping you. And once a person believes escape equals salvation, there's no reasoning with them. The story has already replaced the marriage. Here's the cruel irony. The woman who destroys everything to find herself rarely finds peace. She doesn't reinvent herself, she fragments. Each version she tries on is a costume, the traveler, the artist, the free spirit, the survivor. But none of them stick because none of them address the real wound, the fear of being ordinary. Ordinary feels like death to someone whose entire identity was built on being special. So she keeps reinventing, keeps running, keeps performing, because to stop and face the silence would mean admitting that the only person she's been running from is herself. And when she finally realizes this, often years later, it's too late. The family's gone, the home's gone, the illusion is gone, and all that remains is the one truth she refused to face. You can't build a new self by destroying the people who loved the old one. If you really want to know why this crisis feels universal, you have to step back and look at the story modern culture told women. Because the chaos inside her didn't come from nowhere. It was engineered, slowly, deliberately, generation by generation. In the last 50 years, women were sold a magnificent dream. A dream of independence, power, and choice. A world where she could have it all: career, family, adventure, romance, self-discovery, without ever paying a price. On the surface, it sounded liberating. In reality, it became a psychological paradox. She was told to be everything and still be adored for it. The modern creed whispered through pop culture was simple. You are special, you deserve more, you owe nothing to anyone who limits your happiness. That sentence rewired an entire generation. It replaced duty with desire, permanence with pleasure, and partnership with performance. It made every commitment feel conditional, as long as I'm happy. And happiness, by its nature, is fleeting. The moment it faded, the narrative encouraged her to chase it again, no matter the cost. Once upon a time, therapy was about confronting reality. Now, for many, it's about escaping it. She walks into a counselor's office not to question her impulses, but to have them sanctified. The therapist nods and says, "You deserve to put yourself first. You've been living for others too long. It's time to rediscover your true self." It sounds compassionate, but it feeds the same addiction to feelings over facts, because what she calls her truth is often just her fear, disguised as enlightenment. Modern therapy, too, often validates the symptom instead of addressing the wound. It tells her that discomfort means misalignment rather than maturity. It frames loyalty as codependence, sacrifice as oppression, and endurance as self-betrayal. So when she starts to feel restless, instead of asking, "Why am I uncomfortable?" she concludes, "I must be in the wrong life." Turn on the television, scroll through a feed, open a magazine. Everywhere she looks, there's one message: desire defines you. Aging actresses are praised not for their craft, but for still looking amazing at 50. Reality shows glorify divorce as rebirth. Advertisements sell anti-aging creams as if mortality were optional. The cultural script is relentless: be beautiful, be wanted, be relevant, or disappear. And when she inevitably begins to fade from that stage, she panics because the applause that once validated her has gone silent. What makes this even crueler is that men are told the opposite story. He is taught that age brings power, competence, value. So while his confidence peaks, hers collapses. And the same society that once begged her to be independent now cheers as she detonates her family in the name of freedom. In previous generations, a woman's mirror was glass. Now it's digital and it talks back. Every like, every heart, every comment becomes a pulse of relevance, a scoreboard for existence. She doesn't compare herself to the women next door anymore. She compares herself to filters, to illusions, to 20-year-olds with ring lights. She sees not what is, but what she lacks. And her brain, already sensitive to validation, becomes trapped in an endless feedback loop. Approval, dopamine, crash, need for more. So she posts again, smiles wider, shows more skin. And when strangers praise her, it briefly works, until the silence returns and the silence feels like failure. That's when the midlife crisis ceases to be internal, it goes public. She begins performing her reinvention for an audience that doesn't care. The earliest wave of feminism demanded respect, education, equality before the law. But the later waves, distorted by consumerism, shifted from empowerment to entitlement. It told women not "you are equal," but "you are owed." Not "build something worthy," but "if it doesn't make you feel good, leave." The movement that began as liberation from oppression slowly morphed into liberation from responsibility. And responsibility is the root of stability. The message was subtle but devastating. Men were optional, family was negotiable, and motherhood was secondary to self-expression. Love was no longer a covenant. It became a transaction of emotional highs. So when a 40-year-old woman begins to feel ordinary, she doesn't look inward, she blames the structure itself. Marriage becomes the problem, motherhood becomes the thief, and the husband, the silent witness to her aging, becomes the villain in a story written to justify escape. Put it all together and you have the formula for collapse: a society that worships youth, a media that monetizes insecurity, a psychology field that validates every feeling, a culture that calls rebellion growth. Then add one aging woman who built her worth on being desired, and you have dynamite. She doesn't blow up her family because she wants to. She does it because the culture told her she must to stay alive. Every force around her reinforces the lie that fulfillment is found in the next thrill, not in the quiet endurance of love. And so, she lights the match and calls it transformation. The world applauds her courage. But 6 months later, the applause fades. Her friends move on. The new man grows distant. The nights grow quiet. And in that quiet, she finally meets the truth she'd been running from. Freedom without purpose is another kind of prison, because there is no empowerment in loneliness, no victory in regret. But by the time she sees it, the damage is irreversible. The bridge is gone, the family fractured, the children older, quieter, more guarded, and she realizes that the life she called boring was actually peace, and she traded it for noise. After the storm passes, after the shouting, the tears, the papers signed, the house divided, there's silence. And in that silence, men sit alone, trying to make sense of the wreckage. He looks at family photos and wonders how the same woman who once held his hand through everything could turn around and burn it all down. He replays every conversation, searching for the moment it went wrong. He blames himself first because that's what men do. But eventually the truth starts to surface, not as anger, but as clarity. It wasn't about him. It never was. For men, aging brings an entirely different psychology. When a man turns 40, the world doesn't disappear. It simply shifts focus from potential to proof. He doesn't panic about his looks. He worries about legacy. He's not terrified of being unseen. He's terrified of being irrelevant. But society tells him that his value grows with time. He's entering his prime, experienced, stable, more capable than ever. Even if his body softens or his hair thins, the world reassures him, you're still in the game, you've earned your place. That sense of continuity gives men an anchor. It's why most male midlife crises are external, cars, adventures, risks, but rarely involve dismantling the family itself. His rebellion tends to embarrass him, not destroy him. Women, on the other hand, are told the opposite story. For them, every passing year feels like subtraction. Every wrinkle, a reminder that the power they once wielded effortlessly has expired. So while men face age as a horizon to build toward, women face it as a cliff they're falling from. And the ones who can't accept that fall drag everyone over the edge with them. Once she leaves, something strange happens. She rewrites the past. Suddenly the marriage she once called beautiful becomes toxic. The love letters she wrote become lies. The laughter, the memories, the shared victories, all erased, replaced with a narrative that makes her the hero. She tells her friends, I was never truly happy. She tells the kids, we just grew apart. She tells herself, I had to do this to survive. It's not deceit, it's self-preservation, because admitting she destroyed something good for a temporary high would crush her. To live with that truth would mean facing herself without the armor of justification. So she creates a story that keeps her from drowning in guilt, but the cost of her peace is everyone else's pain. Children are resilient, yes, but not blind. They feel the tension before the separation. They hear the quiet arguments, the slammed doors, the muffled tears. They internalize what's happening in ways they can't express. When the home fractures, so does their sense of safety. They learn that love is conditional, that stability can vanish overnight, that family isn't forever, it's fragile. And though their mother will tell herself, they'll understand one day, what they'll understand is something darker, that she valued her feelings more than their foundation. They won't say it out loud, not for years, but it will live inside them, the belief that love is temporary, that commitment is negotiable, that betrayal is inevitable. That's the real inheritance of a midlife crisis. Not empowerment, not freedom, but generational confusion. For the man, there's an awakening too. At first, he's furious, then broken, then hollow. But eventually, something inside him hardens. Not bitterness, but wisdom. He learns that you can't compete with biology, with culture, with a lifetime of programming. You can only protect yourself from it. He realizes that her betrayal wasn't personal, it was archetypal, a symptom of a deeper societal sickness. And once he accepts that, the shame begins to lift. He stops asking, "Why wasn't I enough?" and starts asking, "Why was she never taught to value what lasts?" And that question, painful as it is, becomes his healing, because in the rubble of what she destroyed, he finds something she never could: clarity. The clarity that peace doesn't come from being desired, it comes from being grounded. That love isn't a feeling, it's a choice repeated through every storm. And that those who chase constant excitement never find rest. Not every woman succumbs to this. Some face the mirror and choose grace instead of denial. They let go of the chase, the fantasy, the illusion that youth defines them. They realize that what makes them beautiful now isn't how many men still look, but how deeply one man still sees. They trade validation for wisdom, vanity for peace, restlessness for reverence. These women age like oak trees, rooted, strong, quietly magnificent. They don't fear the passing of time because they've built something that time cannot erode, a love that has matured past butterflies into belonging. They exist, but they are rare because the world doesn't celebrate them. It celebrates the ones who run, the ones who break, the ones who perform rebellion as empowerment. And yet, when all is said and done, it's the grounded ones, the loyal, wise, unshaken, who die with peace instead of regret. So what is a man to do knowing all this? You cannot fix what she refuses to face. You cannot save someone at war with herself. But you can recognize the signs early. If her self-worth lives in her reflection, if her happiness depends on male attention, if she cannot embrace aging with grace, understand this: you are living beside a ticking clock. Love her deeply, yes, but protect yourself completely. Document everything. Build your independence quietly, because if that crisis comes, she will not fall alone. She will pull down everything in reach. And when she does, you must survive it. Not with rage, but with strength. Not with bitterness, but with truth. Because this world no longer teaches women to age with dignity, but it still expects men to endure with discipline. That endurance, your ability to hold the line when everything collapses, is what separates the destroyed from the reborn. At its core, this isn't a story about gender. It's a story about human fragility. About what happens when an entire culture worships feelings and abandons responsibility. Women were told that happiness is a right, not a consequence. Men were told to adapt, to absorb the fallout, to stay silent. And between those lies, families disintegrated. But if there's one truth that remains, it's this: no amount of validation can replace meaning. No thrill can replace loyalty. No fantasy can replace peace. Time wins every battle, but wisdom decides who survives it. So, when the next storm comes, when you see the panic, the nostalgia, the hunger for attention, don't try to stop the wind. Stand firm, anchor yourself in purpose, because in a world where everyone's chasing youth, the rarest strength left is the courage to stay.